Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Elsa Rahma. I'm from TDI1 and my ID number is C2019 6042. In this term, I would like to explain about translation theory before the 20th century. Okay, the aim of this chapter is not to attempt a comprehensive history of translation of translator through the age. This will be beyond the scope of any book. Instead, the aim focus in the central recurring theme of word for word or sense for sense translation, a debate that dominates much of translation theory in what Newmark called the pre-linguistic period of translation. It is a theme which Susan Basnet sees as emerging again and again with different degrees of emphasis in accordance with differing concepts of language and communication. And then, in this chapter, we focus on a select few of the readily available writing based on the criterion of the influence they have exerted on the history of translation theory and research. The list of the reading will not some of the others that have a justifiable claim for inclusion or that provide a more detailed account. Historically, there has also been a very strong tendency to concentrate on Western European writing to translation, starting with the Roman tradition. Although over the past decade there has been an ever-growing list of publications in English addressing the wider geographic framework and for a wider audience. Word for word or sense for sense. Up until the second half of the 20th century, Western translation theory seemed in what George Stein called a sterile debate over the triadic model of literalism, paraphrase and free imitation. The distinction between word for word and sense for sense translation goes back to Cicero and Jerome. In the West, where the status of the classical author of ancient Greece and Rome remained preeminent, it formed the basis of key writing on translation for nearly 2,000 years. The Roman rhetorician and politician Marcus Tullius Cicero outlined his approach to translation in the Optimo Genere Oratorum, and then introducing his own translation from the Greek of speeches of the 4th century. Attic orator Alexenis and Demosthenes, and I did not transfer them as an interpreter but as an orator, keeping the same ideas and form, or one might say the figure on thought, but in language which conforms to our usage. And in so doing, I didn't hold it necessary to render word from word, but I persevered to general style and force of the language. And then the interpreter of the first line is often read by translation study as being the literal word from word translation, while the orator tried to produce a speech that moved the listener. However, point out that in ancient Rome it was the low social status of the interpreter, a mediator of various kinds, that was disparaged because of a lack of education. This then led to limits and pedantic understanding and to an inelegant word for word Latin style. The disparagement of word for word translation come from others as well, such as the poet Horace, who in a short but famous passage from his Ars Poetica underlines the goal of producing an aesthetically pleasing and creative poetic text in the TL. This attitude had great influence on the succeeding centuries. The most famous of all Western translation cites the authority of Cicero's approach to justify his own Latin revision and translation of the Christian Bible, later to become known as the Latin Vulgate, at a time when different and competing periods of the Bible were being produced. This was commissioned by Pope Damasus in 382 and aimed at establishing an official and standardized Latin translation for use in sources. Jerome revised and corrected early Latin translation of the Greek New Testament, the account of Jesus' life for the Old Testament. He decided to return to the original Hebrew. This was a decision that was controversial to maintain the divine inspiration of the Greek Septuagint, the commonly accepted translation of the older text in use among Christians. And then, although some scholars argue that this term may have been misinterpreted, Jerome's statement is now usually taken to refer to what come to be known as literal, word-for-word, and free sense-for-sense translation. Jerome rejected the word-of-word approach because by following so closely the form of the ST, it produced an absurd translation, cloaking the sense of the original. The sense-for-sense approach, on the other hand, allowed the sense or content of the ST to be translated. In this policy can be seen the origin of both the literal versus free and from versus content debate that has continued until modern times. Next, Jerome is explicitly making some distinction between different text types. While he translates Epiphanius letter idiomatical 10%, the Bible, he says, necessitates a literal method that paid closer attention to the word syntax and ideas of the original early Chinese and Arabic discourse of translation. Jerome's statement is usually taken to be a clearest expression of the literal and free false interpretation. The same concept have been represented in other rich and ancient translation traditions such as in China and the Arab world. The summaries that change involve: number 1, copying with the flexible on Sanskrit syntax by reversing to a standard Chinese order. Number 2, the enhancement of the literary rhymes of the essay to adapt to an elegant. Number 3, the omission of repetitive exclamation. Number 4, the reduction in the paratextual commentaries that accompany the TPS. And reduction of restriction to ensure more logical and linear discourse. Though and also these 3 factors by difficulties are not definitive for the text, the necessitated special care. Number 1, the directing of the message to a new audience. Number 2, the sanctity of the ST words. And number 3, the special status of the SES themselves as the cumulative work of so many followers. The first method associated with Yohana and Al-Hisi was highly literal and consisted of translating its Greek word with an equivalent Arabic word and were non-existent, drawing the Greek word into Arabic. According to Becker and Hanna, this word combo method proved to be unsuccessful and was later revised using the second sense-for-sense method. The second method, associated with Ibn Is and Al-Jawahari, consisted of translating sense-for-sense, creating fluent target text which convey the meaning of the original without distorting the target language. Once again, the terminology of this description is strongly influenced by the classical Western European discourse on translation, although this doesn't negate the applicability of the 2 poles of translation to the Arabic tradition. There are, of course, other ways of considering the question. Concentrated more on the way translation strategy helped establish a new system of thought that was to become the foundation of Arabic Islamic culture, both on the conceptual and terminological level. Over the years, we saw the increased use of Arabic neologism rather than the transliteration of Greek terms. Arab translators also become very creative in supplying intrusive and explanatory commentaries and notes. Humanist and the Protestant Reformation. Within Western society, uses of free and literal translation were for over 1,000 years after A.P. Jerome began of is the translation of the Bible and other religious and philosophical texts before the arrival of the printing press in China in the 11th century and in the 15th century. Texts were laborious copy by hand, which led to numerous error or variant reading. Sensitive religious texts such as Jerome's Latin Vulgate, which was not actually accepted as official by the Roman Catholic Church until 1546, was also unstable because of constant attempts to correct it with alternative reading, the addition of clauses, and so on. Fidelity, spirit, and truth in her early theories of translation. Flora Amos is the history of the theory of translation as by no means a record of easily distinguishable order progression. For her, theory was generally unconnected and amount to a broad series of prefaces and comments by practitioners who often ignore of early attempt at systematic translation theory. The England of the 17th century with Denham, Foley and Dryden marked an important step forward in translation theory with deliberate reason statement unmistakable in their purpose and meaning. At the time, from the Bible, translation into English was almost exclusively confined to first consisting of Greek and Latin classics, because at the time, translation had come to be valued as an exercise in creativity and novelty. Some of these then brings more extreme free such as very free approach to translation produce adoption, notably from another English poet and translator, John Dryden, whose brief description of the translation process will have an enormous impact on subsequent translation theory and practice in the preface to his translation of Ovid's Epistles. In 1680, Dryden reduced all translation to three categories. Number one, metaphrase. It is word by word and line by line translation, which corresponds to literal translation. Number two, paraphrase. It is translation with latitude, where the author is kept in view by the translation so as never to be lost, but his words are not so strictly followed as his sense. This involves changing whole phrase and more or less corresponds to faithful or sense for sense translation. And then the last is number three, imitation. Forsaking both words and sense, this corresponds to Howley's very free translation and is more or less what should I make be understood as adaptation. Maybe enough for me. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.